Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. This is episode number 24. Today's guest is another connection from a good friend of ours, Ryan Turbide. Mm-hmm. Ryan Turbide seems to always throw his friends under the bus, and he will not come on the show.
Yeah, no, we're putting an end to that. He's gonna be sitting in this chair very soon. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. So I'll let this guest introduce himself, name, and he's got a couple businesses, so he can rattle off whatever he wants.
Sure. My name is Ellard. I'm the co-founder and marketing director at Monitor Creative, where we do branding, brand development, and design for restaurant, real estate, and hospitality businesses. I'm also the owner of Lamano, a fresh pasta business where we have, retail fresh pasta, counter service restaurant, and our pasta club of the month.
Cool. And I'm going to ask you about that one because I love pasta. So yeah, I'm very curious about that one. You've watched one show with our friend David Brunning, which is cool just to get a kind of point of reference for what's about to happen. I just like the guests to go back as far as they want to go. And the cool thing about you is, like we talked about off camera, is our worlds are very intertwined. We've never met until Turbide hooked us up. But our interests, the circles we ran in, like it's all the same. So this will be a really cool experience for me to hear your backstory. So Go back to where you grew up, how you grew up, parenting, what you're interested in. Like, take it back.
Oh boy, I'll take it back a ways. I won't go back. I won't go to birth.
That's good.
Yeah,
we'll just fast forward a couple years.
Yeah, but I was born in Calgary. I moved to Abbotsford when I was 7, and then from there we hopped over to Port Coquitlam. So that's where I did a lot of my growing up as a youth, middle school and high school and those sorts of things. Some of the things, I think, key points that kind of led me to where I'm at right now, one of them, just being traveling. I went to Europe when I was 17, spent a month there kind of backpacking and stuff.
Solo or with a crew or?
With a girlfriend.
Yeah. Yep.
So, we went around, and one of the things that I really loved on that trip was just all the graffiti. So taking photos along the way, everywhere I went, street art, whatever. And at that time, it wasn't like you could cruise through Instagram and see a whole bunch of artwork that you're really attracted to. It was like, you had to like see it in person. And that's what I think was really special about the graffiti scene back then. And so yeah, I just I took some of that back with me in that trip and the experience, and I started being really attracted to art in general. And there were there was a couple galleries in Vancouver, Aiden Gallery, El Cartel, had a huge impact on me. They were a streetwear store and art gallery. It had like monthly openings, and I just started to find myself getting into that culture a bit more, and like being a part of an artful community. I would say.
So before you took off to Europe, like regular, just kind of going, like just living, like hanging out, playing sports, messing around. Art? Were you a creative person, or were you like?
In retrospect, I was a creative person. I was more brought up to not be, and it was more like an emphasis on the sciences and getting good grades in those subjects. And then it wasn't until maybe at grade 12 or something I had to choose like an art elective, and I was like, what am I going to do? So I got into photography, into a photography class, and I was deeply into it at that time. I was you couldn't get me out of the darkroom
because it was class. New, and you were just like, this is
and I was just
lights are on, and you're ready to go.
And I was experimenting. I'm taking photos for the first time, and I have a film camera, and I'm developing the film, and I'm trying other things and multiple exposures. My my photography teacher, she's like writing on my reports and stuff. She's like, you have the eye, like
no
10
way.
out of 10 and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, sweet.
What'd your parents say when they're like?
Oh, they loved it. Like, showed them, and I have a whole album of, photos that I took and developed myself. And, and that as well, like I, continued that when I went to Europe and, was taking photos of art
Did your that kind of the at home push to do the scholastic stuff, like traditional things, did that, when you figured out that you had the creative bone in you, did they allow you to like scratch it and like?
Oh yeah,
like
I was allowed to do. I didn't have I wouldn't say it was like a strict upbringing. It was like, you're going to be a professional of some sort, doctor, lawyer. I did a lot of things. I was also a competitive gymnast growing up. So
like which apparatuses?
Well, all the men's stuff, like all around men's gymnasts. So
no way.
Yeah, that's floor, pommel horse, rings, all parallel bars, high bar.
No way.
In that order, that's the order that you do those events. But so I did that all growing up.
Like competitive
from 11 to 17 is when I stopped.
Which was a huge commitment, right? Like six days a week at least, like
easily. Yeah. It was like during the summer, it was like training twice a day, morning, evening.
Yep.
It was a 40+ hour a week sort of commitment. I did that all through school, and kept me. I think it developed some habits for me. There's some competitiveness and some discipline, and that sort of thing. So.
How'd you get into gymnastics? It's not an obscure sport. It's obscure in my world, but it's definitely a.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to play hockey, but my dad was like, "You don't want to get up at 5 a.m."
Fair.
That's probably true, and he also probably knew. He's like, "Oh, you're not going to be very tall."
Got some genetics.
Yeah. So hockey, football, those sorts of things were like I think he had like some foresight into that, and then, but I was 5, right? Yep. And at that time, he took me to University of Calgary, and we just kind of like stood on the sidelines of like this gymnastics going on, and my dad was a diver there, and he used to coach at UFC as well, and
gotcha.
So he brought me there, and he's like, I'm seeing people doing cartwheels and stuff. He's like, so do you want to do this? And when you're 5, you're like, yeah, okay, sure. I'll do it. And then so that I got into some recreational programs, and just went competitive a few years later.
And those lessons you learned,
yeah,
when you can see them now, it's got to be like fairly obvious of that work ethic and drive and competition and peers and
absolutely,
all that transfers into what you're up to today. Like
I would say, well, I mean, the biggest one being the commitment, like just just the work, and pushing through. I mean, I think gymnastics is a particularly mental sport, because you have to be ready. Like you have to go for it, because if you bail, partway through a line or like a release move or whatever it is you're doing, you're gonna hurt yourself. So having like visualizing what you're gonna do, and then executing it all the way is something that definitely carried through.
How do you when you're operating your businesses, that when you're deciding of how to grow or even just to open the business, are you actually like putting together a 15-page business plan, or are you seeing something and you're just going that direction because when you see it, you see the vision, you can work towards it?
It's a little of both. I mean, I went to Mount Royal, took the small business and entrepreneurship course that was offered there at the time, and the way I got into my first business was because I had taken this new venture feasibility course, and it was just a business plan writing course. The instructor, she had, she was, I think one of the toughest instructors that I had in that program, and she was really, harsh about certain things about your plan, but you spend the whole semester with her just writing this plan and going through every part of it. And at the end of the course, it was a 3rd-year course. At the end of the course, I had this thing, and I was like, well, I'm going to do it now. And that business was the Gallery. It was a streetwear store. It was heavily influenced by El Cartel out in Vancouver, where I'd spent a lot of time, and I had spoken to those guys quite a bit about it, just like bit of mentorship from them, and And the whole concept was, it's a clothing store, it's an art gallery. We held monthly art openings. I was getting artists to paint on the walls every time, do an installation. We'd show their work, would sell their work. For me at that time, it was more about involving myself in the arts. I was like, whatever I do, I want to just surround myself with the art. I'm not going to be the artist, so I'm going to just surround myself, immerse myself in it. And it's also how I'm going to be a part of the community and going to attract people here and, share some of that passion that I had for artwork. So yeah, that was the first business. Definitely heavily dictated by a business plan. I went through all the steps in terms of like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put together the financials. I'm going to present it to the bank for loans and stuff like that. Whether or not the banks really look at that, they want to see you have it, and then they're like, okay, so how much is your house worth?
What can you sign over to us?
Yeah. So, so that was
the school thing. Sorry, the school thing's really interesting because I didn't know that. I kind of remember that program ish, but I never would have thought about going into it.
Yeah.
When you're done high school and you're trying to figure out what you're doing, did you know right away that it was kind of the business and entrepreneur program that you were eyeing, or what? Like, how did your head get there?
Well, my head got there because to go back, like
keep going back.
A couple of years.
I like going back.
Yeah, I was like, I guess around the same time that I got back from Europe, I also got a job at the Keg. So I was, I applied for Dish. They're like, no, you're a busboy. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what that is, but sure. And so I'd been there for a few months when I was like, I really like the guys in the kitchen. They seem to have a good thing going on.
Just the banter and the energy back there.
Absolutely. And I was like, I want to move into there. And, so they're like, sure, there you are. And, started, cooking appies and stuff like that. And, I think it was within 6 months, I was starting to move up, and, now I'm on grill, and then, there's a little bit of turnover, and then I'm now one of the head cooks, and, all of that. And I really, really loved, cooking, and I loved that, environment of just like, powering through,
like rushes,
yeah, exactly. And just, getting it done really well.
Yep.
So when it was time to go to school, I thought, okay, well, I really love cooking, I really love, the arts, and I guess I can be like, that's an artful thing, to be a cook. And, so I'll go to business school though, cause I want to own a restaurant. So,
that's where you went.
That's where I went. So I was like, well, I could go to cooking school or I could go to business school. And I took the business route. Yeah.
Did you have any idea when you first started cooking the back of the Keg that you would be that into it?
No, I didn't. Yeah, not at all. And, that was it was an interesting experience. I learned a lot as well about, just leadership and, trying to run a line and, all of that. But then also not being a dick, because I was always at front of house, back of house. And, for the first little bit, I was like, my buddy Alan there, it was like always just like kind of like yelling at servers and stuff. I was like, that's what it's like. I'm going to be like service, and I'm going to be like, yeah, food runners, and just like, calling it out. And, but that Keg, like that,
which one are we at?
New Westminster.
Okay.
Yeah, which isn't there anymore, but it was a haunted train station from the 1800s. But that staff there, the camaraderie there was just like, so tight, and all of the servers, everybody front of house, back of house, you have drinks afterwards.
Yep.
They were like, at one time, a couple of the girls pulled me aside and they're like, Aaron, don't be like Alan. Just, don't do it, man. Like, you should come serve. And I was like, well, you know what? I don't need to be a server to be nice. Yeah. So, that changed everything for me. And I got a lot better at it. Like, I was immediately propelled in, in the ranks at the Keg, and that carried forward to other restaurant jobs that I've had. So
the restaurant Was that your first job then at the keg?
That was my first job. I was there for 2 years before moving to Calgary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the restaurant. So then it became. You knew right away that you wanted to own a restaurant.
Yeah, that's when I moved to Calgary, and I'm still, I started going to school and stuff. I was like, I'm going to just stay in restaurants.
Yep.
I, very soon got a job at the McLeod Trail Keg here, and it was the same situation. The kitchen manager at the time, he's just like, well, some of these guys have been here a long time, and it was true. Like they've been there 10 plus years a lot of the line, and they're like, so I got to start you on apps. I know you're a head cook over there, but I got to start you on apps.
Yep.
And it was like $8 or $9 an hour or something like that. No tips. And,
glamorous.
Yeah. But, within a year, I just applied myself, and within a year, I was making $25 an hour plus an extra 10 an hour in tips. And I was the head cook there. And,
crazy.
Some of the other guys were upset about it, but it was just like the difference was, the communication and being able to, manage my time and save the restaurant a lot of money every night on errors.
Did you, when you're working, when you're starting at Appy's or whatever, you know the hierarchy, you know the ladder you have to climb to get to the KM or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Was it in you? Did you know that you wanted to climb the ladder? Like, did you want to get to the top of that? Did you want to perform at the high level, or or were you just okay doing your thing and letting it come to you?
Inherently, I'm not okay just like letting stuff come to me.
Yeah. You put the work in to go.
I put the work in, and then also I just, I don't know, my ego can't handle it or something. Like,
But it's weird though, because you understand this team and you know how to communicate.
Yeah.
But it's that ego of just you want to have the final say, or you want to be directing the team.
Well, and it's whether I'm right or not. I think that my approach is better, and that I want to, be the one calling the shots there.
And that comes from experience. It comes from just confidence. It's just
it probably in the beginning came from overconfidence.
Yeah, just being like a young kid thinking.
Totally. Yeah, just being a hothead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that keg, you were there for a while, and then did you go somewhere else?
Yeah, I was there for a while. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, I need to become a chef somewhere.
Are you going to school then? Sorry,
I'm still going to school.
Business school.
Business school.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to business school, cooking at the keg. I'm stepping on toes, and as the years went by, I was like, hey, enough of the keg. I need to have a better understanding of restaurants and also evolve my cooking skills and those sorts of things. So I took a big step down in pay to go work at Mercado.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I worked, I got a job there. It's probably through nepotism or something. And,
down on 4th Street?
Yeah, on 4th Street.
Okay.
Yeah. And they put me on the garde manger station, and my goal was to work there, learn from everybody online, which I did, and I absorbed as much as I could. And, I was fortunate at the time, like Rob Jewell was online, Steve Smee, and, a couple other really influential people in the restaurant industry now. And of course, Spencer, who's still the executive chef there. So taking that opportunity to learn under them a little bit. And,
did you know you wanted to go Italian, or did you know that these players were there, or was it just randomly that like?
It was 2007, so I knew it was the hottest restaurant in Calgary basically at the time. And I was like, this is a place that's, busy. They have great food, they have a beautiful kitchen. It's an open kitchen, so I was really attracted to it. And I didn't know that I wanted specifically long-term to go Italian, but I did know that, this was the culinary experience that I needed, to have a better understanding of how a boutique kitchen works.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So how long, so you started off at that station, you said it very eloquently. I can't even pronounce what you said, but you work in that station, and then you kind of like.
Yeah. I was there for a year, maybe a little less than a year. What changed for me was just some of what I felt like were kitchen politics, something I hadn't, in a way that I hadn't experienced them before. And just not seeing myself progress on the line. And it also changed my attitude toward restaurants. And maybe I was like, too prideful or something in that time where I was like expecting to see faster growth because it's what I had experienced before. But in that time I was like, well, is this what it's like then? Is this the kitchen politics? Is this the dynamic? Like, maybe I don't want to, pursue restaurant so hard. And it just happened to be at the same time that, I was in my third year now and starting to do this new venture course and really thinking about what was going to be feasible for me and those sorts of things. And I wouldn't say that that's the whole piece. I think that part of it was that, opening a restaurant is really expensive. It's a really huge investment. Opening a clothing store, not so much. I was interested in, that too. So
it was perfect. Like the timing was
learning
one thing, feeling the other thing at work, and all of a sudden it shifts your
exactly. Yeah. So and that's when I went hard into the gallery, which was on 17th Ave for 5 years.
Yep. 17th and
17th between 17th and 9th, like almost across the street from Beano, where Made by Marcus is. That used to be Aluminum Planet.
Oh yeah.
And then there was Worth, which is that gluten-free restaurant. That's Worth, and next to Worth was the gallery. What
was about that little strip right there? Why was it all of a sudden became this like clothing kind of spot with Aluminum Planet there, and like just all of a sudden, like just by coincidence, you guys are all going there?
Sort of. It was also a weird time. So I signed my lease in April 2008. There were like no vacancies on 17th Avenue. Worth had just been open maybe less than a year. And then the space next door to him, came available, and I was like, oh well, this is a good mix, right? Like this is, clothing, and we're all kind of different, and this is gonna be great,
And so 2008, are you now done school?
2008, I have just finished my third year, and I'd done that new venture feasibility course. Okay. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply it. I'm just going to go for it. Like, now's the time. I'm over kitchens. I'm going to get into retail. Yeah. And, but it was super important to me that it was going to be an art gallery as well, and that we were going to have these openings every month, like first Thursdays and stuff like that. And
were you still, as you're working in the kitchens, are you still like the creative side of you? Is it kind of buried away? Are you like taking photos? Are you messing around with anything? Or are you just kind of like, you are looking at things that inspire you, magazines or whatever?
The cooking was the creative outlet for me. It was the plating, it was the combination of food and ingredients, those sorts of things. Not so much that you don't get that so much at the keg. But yeah, I mean, I think that's where I was finding my outlet. I was, drawing and sketching and stuff at home, and may have bought some spray paint at some point, done that thing. But it was never like, I was never developing into the artist, so to speak. Yeah.
Gotcha. So now you decide that you want to build something that builds a community, which is very interesting. You use that word, community, because that's something that I kind of, as I'm figuring out myself, community seems to be a big part of what I do and why I do my thing. So you want to build an art community. You're not an artist, so you come up with this idea. And bring them all, essentially host the party, bring everyone into your space.
Yeah, essentially. And it made a splash, I gotta say, when we opened. And it was, I think the fact that it was presenting opportunity to young artists, like young emerging artists, a lot of kids from ACAD, being able to come in and apply for a show or something, we would show it, and trying to mix in more experienced artists when we had the chance. So we did do a show for David. That was super successful.
So what would your shows look like? Like, what would that, like a grand opening kind of thing? Like, what was it?
Oh yeah, so the shop was designed so that the clothing was low and along the walls, and to maximize the white wall space. And when we'd have a show, we would just cover up all the clothes with like one big vinyl thing that just like was black. We had a DJ booth in the back.
Was music? Sorry, did you just keep on like I'm just like the music thing, like the DJ thing?
Yeah.
Were you always into music, or why do you put a DJ booth in a clothing store?
It was being a streetwear store, heavily influenced by hip hop, and
that's why I didn't get an invite. I didn't play hip hop.
Yeah, this is why our paths were like
totally
here and
house
here,
and
right?
hip hop. We just didn't go.
Yeah, exactly. So we, it is important to me that to have the ability to have a DJ there, especially if you're doing art openings or something like that, and but yeah, anyway, it was mostly white walls, cover up the clothes, art goes up. There's an art installation every month, an artist
every month.
Yeah. So like someone would
you were
paint.
hosting a party.
Oh yeah. So exactly. And man, I was painting that store white every month. Like
Crazy.
We started to lose square footage because it was just like
coming out,
rolling it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So that was like, when you say make a splash,
that
was kind of part of your idea, was to kind of bring people into your environment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And these up and coming artists, did you just kind of hand select them? They would show you their portfolio. You'd be like, oh, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I would try and, try and have some really reputable artists. Well, we did some group shows too, but I thought, maybe it'd be better to focus on one artist a month and just do that and really showcase it, give them the chance to like show a full body of work. And, we showed Dave, we showed his brother, Matt Browning, just like phenomenal. And some other people too, Eric Louie, who's a great artist. He moved out to Vancouver. We've had photography shows. We did like one of the cooler ones was called Art and Soul. So that was like a footwear show. That would be one of our group ones where everyone paints a canvas shoe.
Cool.
Show that. And we actually did one because I was doing this and my buddies owned El Cartel in Vancouver. We actually organized one that went across Canada. So we would, have a group shoe show that went from, Vancouver to Calgary, Toronto, Montreal. Yeah.
Cool.
It's fun stuff.
And the streetwear side of it. So there's art up top and streetwear below it.
Yeah.
You just picking lines that are interesting?
Absolutely. I had certain brands that I was really attracted to.
What were they back then?
Back then, there's one of our first brands was called Upper Playground, and it was from San Francisco, and some of my favorite illustrators worked for the brand, so they were, designing T-shirts and stuff, and so we brought in a lot of their stuff.
How'd you find them back then?
Going to the shows. So go to
literally traveling.
Yeah.
There's no swiping to find anything at that point.
No, not at all.
It's
not
like work to find these things.
No. So yeah, you have to go to the trade shows and check them out, and that was a big one for me in the beginning, and then it was brands like Stussy and Undefeated and Rockwell and just like some cool streetwear brands. But I gotta tell you, like, worst time to get into streetwear. It was just like
because there wasn't a lot of options, or it wasn't that good
because it was almost over. Everywhere,
you were like
forever. Yeah.
Timing.
Yeah. It was terrible. And, I'm not going to say it was terrible, but it was terrible timing in terms of global trends and retail trends and the internet and the way people started getting their information. If I had, gotten into business a couple of years later, it would look totally different. It would be like an online store had to be at the forefront. And and then that's what I did, because the next shop that I opened was called Understudy. It was on First Street, and it was, I was sort of seeing this change in menswear and in clothing and those sorts of things. I was like, this needs to progress quickly. And also my lease on 17th Ave is just killing me. Every store on the street closed at one time, and we were an island, it felt like. So lease is coming to a close. You're seeing a new opportunity in the industry. Yeah. And you did the switch. Yeah. And by coming to a close, like, we still had 2 years on it, but I was like, I have to start the next thing in case we don't even make it. You know what I mean? So, so Understudy opened, and it was more of a progression. I was, more focused on menswear, more
Where was
contemporary. It was on First Street and 13th Ave.
Okay.
What was next to us at the time? I mean, it's next door to where Vine Arts is now. And it was, it was another, I think, big splash in terms of the menswear and the products that we were bringing in. And
a different style, like a different, dude, I know nothing about fashion. I'm the most I know nothing. So you're educating me right now.
So much more thoughtful, much more, on trend in menswear, but also focus on cult brands from, different parts of the world, Japan, New York, those sorts of things. And and so, again, we're just trying to offer like a different product, a more exclusive product, and a tighter curation.
And how big was that space?
It was about 800 square feet.
Yeah. And you worked it every day?
No, I had 2 business partners there.
Okay.
And, whole other story there.
Yep.
In terms of how those things go.
Different podcast?
Yeah, different podcast. Yeah. But, the store that's there now is called Newish. So it's a thrift store or vintage store. Pretty cool. It's actually a little collective of business owners, which is neat to see. Yeah.
So sorry, the gallery, how long did you run that one? And then
so 5 years the gallery. We actually, so I started on 17th Ave. We did move to First Street next door to understudy for our final year there. And the whole purpose of moving the gallery to First Street was to actually just get out of that lease earlier and hope that they could rent it out, sooner and save $9,000 a month. And
good idea.
Yeah. And then understudy, I think it was 2011 that opened. Yeah. And it 2011, 2012, and it closed last year.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. But I left in 2017.
So the interesting piece for me is the idea of to go get an education to build a business. To put all these. Do you find did that provide you the foundation to make these decisions on the business side? Whether to how to open, like budgets, or is it you just seeing something and going after it?
And that like goes back to one of your earlier questions, like, the last business plan that I wrote for the purposes of opening a business was for the gallery, and since then, it's been
just doing
seeing the vision, understanding what you've just gone through, and kind of building on that.
And then, so when you decide to close a business, I don't want to go to the shitty time, but like, is it very clear what has to happen? And is that the most difficult decision?
Sometimes it's very clear. Like sometimes, your bank account's like, you got to close, right? That's black and white or black and red.
Yeah.
And, other times it's not so clear at all. Other times you're hanging on to things for the wrong reasons. Or, you're just like hopelessly naive or optimistic that it's going to turn around. Yeah.
Maybe next month.
Yeah. So, I mean, failing fast, was a lesson that I never learned. Well, I have now, but hopefully I'm not in that position. So.
Exactly. So do you have another business while the second store is open, or is it like close or get out of that one and then do something else? Where's the next step for you?
I mean, the next step is just a continuation of my restaurant career.
So you're going back?
Well, things were so hard on 17th Avenue. And I had my girlfriend at the time, and we had a kid I was 23. And the gallery was, a year and a half old. And, all of a sudden this thing is happening, outside of that. And, so I needed some security, and, so I went back and started working at Una. Because Steve Smee, who was over at Mercado before, opened Una with Jamie and Kelly over there, and
right across the street.
Yeah, so I was like, well, this is what I'm going to moonlight here, and I was there for like 6 years. I just
no way.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I was bartending there, and it just subsidized my life, you know, in a way that needed to happen.
Yep.
And
what if it wasn't an Italian joint? Would you have still gone there? Like, or is it him? Was it your buddy that kind of drove the reason?
It was the team there, you know? Yeah, for sure. And again, being like, 3 months in, you knew that Una was like the spot. Mm-hmm. It was like 2-hour wait list. Mm-hmm. It was, so yeah, that was what initially drew me there for sure. Yeah.
So you're moonlighting. So
I'm moonlighting. I'm doing all this stuff. All these business activities are happening. Mm-hmm. And I guess the next thing for me, while understudy was going is, I still had a love for, for food, a love for, doing something really creative. I got into, ended up doing like a pop-up restaurant called Sum Sum. So it was a pop-up dim sum restaurant. We did it at Commonwealth, where we, took over the whole bar for like, on Sunday for like 3 Sundays in a row.
I remember that.
And we just like, decked it out like, with decor and music and lighting. And we even had dim sum carts built. And my buddy Xander and I did that. He was the kitchen guy. I was going to be the front house marketing, all of that. Mm-hmm. And so did that pop up. Did another,
Why dim sum? Sorry.
I really like dim sum.
Just like, and you just figured out how you could do it properly?
I gotta say, dim sum's really hard to cook.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's really hard. Mm-hmm. I was like, there's like no soup dumpling joint in Calgary, so we gotta do soup dumplings. And like, I couldn't pick a more difficult dumpling, I don't think, to try and make. So, oh man, I mean, we were prepping, figuring it out. We were prepping at Commonwealth in their tiny little kitchen while they were partying,
like the night's going, right?
Yeah, like night's going, and it's the night before service, and we have the
walls are shaking.
Yeah, we have everything shut, so nobody could see us, but we're back there and we're like making soup dumplings, and it's just like bass and it's rumbling, and then and the first service was kind of a disaster because we stored these dumplings in Commonwealth's fridge attached to the kitchen there, but it was a cake fridge and it was super humid. So when we went back in the next morning for service, they were like melted, and we were, oh man, it was heart wrenching.
Because this is the first one.
That was the first.
So you sent out all the personal texts and email, like you've got your entire network to come check this out. I'm guessing
it was insane. We did a lead campaign going up to it, and so our MailChimp list was 1,000 people before the first service, and like they all showed up. It was like lined up down the street. And nothing went right at all. It was one of those things where you're like, just like,
just tuck and run.
I was just like standing at the line, just like looking into the kitchen, and Sanders, and our kitchen guys are just like, it's good, and I'm just like hot in the face because there's like 200 eyes on me in the back, like, where's the dim sum?
What'd you do? You order McDonald's and give them like cheeseburgers?
No, we got through it. We had other menu items, right? Oh. But soup dumplings were going out. They were terrible. Yeah, I just, what we did for the next 2, we I ordered them from Great Taste. I just went in there. I was like, I need 800 dumplings. Next Sunday, can you make them? They were like, yes.
Done.
No problem.
We
know how to do that.
lesson learned.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So this pop-up idea is it you just like dipping your toe back in the restaurant world with your own kind of like leading the?
That was me staying involved. Just and wanting to do something like.
Were you testing something?
Uber creative. I was,
testing yourself, like testing your theory, testing like, do you think I can do this like full time?
No, I think I've always just been driven by like making something happen, like making a thing that people experience, and and just going for it, I guess.
Yep.
A month after we did that first Sum Sum, like the 3 weeks, Randy Gibson and I threw a factory party at the planetarium, like where Contemporary Calgary is now, and it was part of the fundraiser for Contemporary Calgary. So Boom Goes a Drum was doing, this big event Steve Martin was going to be at, and
Yeah.
this huge live auction, and they're just raising like as much money as they can for the new location of Contemporary Calgary. And the after party was to be Factory Party, and I don't know if you ever went to one,
No.
but they were like Andy Warhol inspired art parties that started on a micro scale, at like a small gallery called Art Life, and it was just hipsters showing up and drinking beer and like painting the walls and stuff, and tinfoil everywhere, and but like live bands too, and that was a big part of it. So over a couple of years, they did 6 or 8 of them, and I helped. So Randy Gibson's like the the master behind those, and I just helped him sell tickets sometimes and helped him promote them. And they culminated in this huge format at the Uptown Theater, and it was like literally like a couple thousand people showing up, sponsored by Molson, like multiple stages, multiple bands and stuff. And so it all went away after the last one. I don't remember what year that was, but fast forward 6 years later or so, we're tasked with doing another one at the planetarium. So this some happened. Factory Party was the next month, and it was just crazy, man. It was like we had 3 stages, we had 5 art installations, we had 6 bands, 6 DJs, and then just like decor throughout that we had to put together.
Crazy.
We did it in like 5 weeks or something, and
but loved it. Like you're involved, you're like front and center in a community, you're like you're doing everything that you do.
Love, hate, like there were times in the moment where I was like, this is it. I'm just gonna die. Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I feel like I have PTSD from it all.
That's probably a touch of it. So after the pop-ups, what do you like? Then where are you at?
Well, I needed some time to recoup. I felt like, it was just a crazy period of time in my life. And it was, I don't know if I was like doing all this stuff and like soul searching thing or whatever it was, but needed to chill out a little bit after that. Yeah.
Just like be like away from people, or just.
Yeah. I think just like, you do these things, and there's something about doing something very, very creative that makes you more vulnerable, because, on the spectrum of businesses, you can have something that's very logistical and not creative, like a trucking company or something, to like being an artist where everything you do is just an expression of yourself. So, being one step back from that and doing these creative projects that were meant to really engage the community and provide an experience, all that stuff, and all that, creativity being like just the execution of this vision that you have. It's really hard to fail at any part of it because, a lot of eyes are on it. And it's maybe why I don't like that's why I'm not in the spotlight so much.
It's exhausting. It can be.
Well, you just want some sort of shroud between you and everybody in case, it goes wrong, or whatever. So,
it's a lot of energy to like.
It's a lot of energy, and it's a lot of pressure that you put on yourself.
Yeah, especially when you're a high performer and you like see the vision, where it needs to execute, and it takes a lot of energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you kind of take your time. And then when you decide you're ready to do something, where's your move?
At that time?
Yeah.
Well, at that time, I think it was shortly after, maybe 1 year after that, things started falling apart with my partnerships at Understudy. Things were going sideways there. I felt like I've always had multiple things on the go, not just out of like, creative need for it, but also out of a financial need for it, and also just making sure that, I'm good. The whole time I'm like, I'm trying to not bartend anymore because, my nights are just
Yep.
getting eaten up. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, what are things that I can do simultaneously and still, keep the lights on and like, still like, support, what I need to support at home.
Yep.
And so I was doing some consulting on the side. I had really done, what I think was a very good job of scaling our e-commerce business at the shop. And I started, I had been learning more and more about digital advertising, about, e-commerce,
Yep.
Shopify, and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I started, consulting, and I had a couple, clients come on, and, one of them I'm still doing work for now,
Crazy.
which is great,
Mm-hmm.
and, that started to like grow and grow a little bit. And,
Yep.
I had a studio space, where we were doing all our photography for e-commerce and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, well, let's, rent a couple desks in here too, just some other photographers or creative people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I met my partners for monitors. We were all kind of sharing a space, and I was consulting on the advertising end.
Yep.
And, Lauren and Cam were, doing some branding and website design and
Mm-hmm.
development, and they were, in the space with me renting there. And then we ended up getting a client, which is Round Square, and that client was, at the time, the scope of work was big enough that we needed financially to create a company, just to organize it better. And that's kind of how Monitor happened.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So just by chance, you decide to rent some desks,
Mhm.
and some like-minded people show up.
Yeah.
And you guys all of a sudden,
Yeah.
here we are, Monitor.
Complementary skill sets, etc. Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, it was,
What year was that?
that was 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now Monitor's obviously still doing its thing.
Yeah. Monitor's doing its thing. I departed from understudy on like, not amazing terms.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of left retail behind me at that point.
Yep. You okay with that? Is there anything in you that still wants to, if you can put a different colored lens on, would you ever do retail again?
I just did. Man.
Oh.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But this time it's way different.
Okay.
Where absolutely nothing depends on us selling something. Yeah. So La Mano, our production kitchen on 15th Avenue is also a retail shop. And that space happens to be that studio that I had before. That was our photo studio. So, but pre La Mano, we got to talk about nights and weekends.
Yep.
So, because
go.
Because nights and weekends, that was 2018, winter 2018 that we started. And it's actually because of Sum that a developer approached me, Jim Mitchell. He is an investor at Meat and Bread. He owned, and he's got a bunch of other spaces, but he approached me at a party that I was helping cater, and he was like, Aaron, I got to talk to you. Meat and Bread, it's here, it's in the Grain Exchange. They're only operating during the day, and I'm trying to figure out how I can get some revenue in there in the space at night.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be interested in doing something like Sum? And in the back of my head, I was like, never Sum ever again. But the answer is yes. And I didn't know what it was going to be, but I was like, I can do something cool. That's a beautiful, beautiful room.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a cool location. It doesn't feel like Calgary. It's Grain Exchange. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Sign me up. And so that was October. And then by December, I had a kitchen team and a front of house team and branding and the promotion around it. And we opened first weekend of January.
Great time to open.
Yeah. But it was great. It was like, a really full on pop-up experience in terms of, the level we were executing, both conceptually with food and, service, our wine selection, everything was really tight.
Yep.
And it was, we did it for like a year and a half. Yeah. Because January 2019, all the way through to,
wow,
March 2020 and the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. Mm-hmm. So then that one's just ran its course. Or was just the world ending kind of needed to stop.
Well, we couldn't have a space anymore.
Yeah.
Already we're layering, a complex business on top of a restaurant, which is a complex business, and with things closing all the time, and remember when we all thought it was just going to be 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally. Totally.
And there's been like multiple lockdowns since then, and so we've had potential spaces, like for a while pursuing it pretty hard, like I'll gotta find another spot for this, and
to do it full time ish, or just
keep doing it full time, because we would spend we'd be every Wednesday to Saturday kind of thing every week, ongoing in the spaces that we're going into. So I was looking for another space to do that in, and a couple of things came across our plate, and we couldn't move on it because something would change.
Totally.
But Lamano kind of started out of that. So it was, at first it was out of necessity, like, okay, I got to keep some revenue coming in for, to keep some staff on. And I would say most of the staff, they had to be let go. But wanted to keep a couple of people on to support, that going forward. And as things became more permanent in terms of this isn't just like a 2 week or 4 week thing, I had to decide that this actually needs to be a viable business. So that's when I started really focusing on it. That's when Pasta Club started in January.
That was the first kind of version of.
Yeah, we had been doing small amounts of wholesale to other stores, and doing our online stuff direct to consumers. But I was like, well, like the best way to do this right now is to just get that, that recurring revenue model going. And Pasta Club seems cool, right? And I was like, I can collaborate with a different chef every single month on a feature, really push it. And Mike Peugeot was a huge help in, some of those collaborations, and just, being like the face of things, and also like, he's just such a, well-regarded guy in the industry. So that's how Lamano really started, is just
first ghost kitchen kind of thing, like just put it all together and then
totally. First it was
online.
Like going to be probably temporary, and then we'll see where it goes, and then things became more long term. And when I decided to go for it, I made the commitment of okay, I'm going to build out our production kitchen in my photo studio that no one's using, and that's going to be my like retail spot as well, where you can walk in and buy fresh pasta and stuff on the shelves.
Why'd you go back to pasta?
Everyone loves pasta.
I agree. Do you think if you didn't have your crack at Mercado, would you have gone there?
Well, I think,
or you always a pasta guy, just doesn't, you would have got there eventually.
Always loved cooking pasta, for sure.
Yeah.
It was always a strong suit of our chef at nights and weekends. It was always a strong suit of his, to make pasta, and it just made sense. Like at the time I was like, this is something we can do. And the startup on it, all you need is one pasta machine, which we had, and then, later I invested in more
tools.
More tools. Yeah. It's endless where you can do with that. But I think one of the challenges is not being Italian.
Yeah.
And so I think from here on out is always trying to take the perspective of, learning and improving, and never being 100% happy with what you have. And I think that's just part of,
you have to.
It's a part of everything, part of business, part of, being creative. It's part of, you know, serving the community the best that you can and executing a vision. So,
yep. The idea of collaboration. So are you doing that every month, or is it kind of seasonal or quarterly, or like, where's your, because that, you know,
it's different chef every month.
Is it?
Yeah.
And they're putting their own spin on something with your kind of foundation of offerings, or is it like it's all their stuff going out the door?
It's blank slate. We do have over 500 members now. And so that's a lot of pasta to make.
That is a lot.
It's a huge amount. And so the only parameters we usually give the chef we're working with is try not to pick a very complicated noodle.
Because you need 500 things got to go out the door.
Well, you know, something like tortellini that's really small and folded and there's multiple moves. It's like, you do that times 18,000, right? You know, that's how many you have to make. Yeah. So that's our only thing. It's like, just make it, you know, ravioli's easier, egg noloti's easier. You can just like, you know, do long cuts of, you know, and stuff like that. But otherwise it's like whatever your recipe is, you know, and we'll scale it up. You know, we'll make 200 liters of it.
No way.
But, you know, that can be, you know, figured out, right?
Local collaboration, or are you bringing people from outside of Calgary?
So far, we've remained in Calgary.
Cool.
I would like to branch out as well. But there's just there's great chefs in Calgary.
And how do you get access to them? What's your...
I just send them a message.
Just say, hey, I got this little club on the side here.
Yeah, it's an email or it's on Instagram. And, you know, in the beginning, we've definitely worked with like guys that we know. Yep. Right. Yeah. But I'm trying to branch out and show some like diversity and some, you know, some different types of food as well. Cause it doesn't have to be only Italian chefs you're working with on a pasta. So, you know, it's our sous chef actually, you know, this month she's doing a Taiwanese one. And last month we did, you know, with Jesse Mann over at, from Modi Mahal and Saffron. So he had his Indian flair on it. And when those come together, it sometimes is just the best flavor. So, yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. It's great because it's a thing where there's just endless, you know, endless opportunities to work with someone and to highlight some type of food. Yeah.
Super cool. So Pasta Club's doing his thing, rolling, everything's good. Yeah. And then you decide, I got time for something else, or like, what's next?
I'm out. I'm like, you know, like, I think things have settled a bit. I mean, I want to continue to grow the business as I have. Yep. I don't want to be, you know, it's been, you know, 14, 15 years of this and this and this. When you talk about it all, it sounds really hectic. Yeah. You know, it's like, what are you talking about? You did that and that, and then you were doing, but, the reality is like each thing has been, you know, years, like the gallery is 5 years, you know, and Understudy was, you know, 7 years I was there. And then it was like, you know, so even though there's some pop-ups in between, I do like to focus, and I do like to, you know, see something through and, you know, create this, you know, long lasting thing as well.
Well, what about First Street? How does that play into all this?
Like First Street Market?
Yeah.
Well, we're there. We're at, you know, it's a counter service restaurant, and, you know, we're in it. It's for us, it's a good outlet to showcase, you know, how we can put dishes together in a restaurant setting. Yeah. It comes with its own challenges, you know, space being one of them. And, you know, what I didn't take into account was just in that setting, how fast people want their food, because they're like, oh, it's like, you know, it's like walking into a food court at Chinook. It's not. Like, the restaurants that are in there are like, you know, really developing things. So that's how our approach to everything is anyways. It's like we're making restaurant food here, but people want it in like 5 minutes. So
order, walk down, and then pick it up and walk out.
Yeah, like order and then stand there and like, you know. It's like we're building it from scratch, you know.
So is it just a play off of the club? Like, is it, you know, the club you have different collaborations.
Yeah.
This is more just you guys set it.
It's us. It's we're serving our product. We're making pasta fresh at our kitchen.
Yep.
And just bringing it over every day. And
yep.
Just
And the idea to go there, like the idea to open First Street, like, you know, it's kind of like, it's not. Well, you know, it's not bricks and mortar. It is bricks and mortar, but it's not like a standalone. But you've decided to have a physical location to sell your product.
Well, it's funny because I mean, if you're a resident at the Underwood, you know that First Street Market's been coming for like 2.5 years. It's been a long time, and they approached me because of nights and weekends. So you know, they saw what was happening with the pop-up, and they were like, "Do you want a space?" And that's when talks first started. And a lot evolved since then, both in the deal that they were presenting and as well my own business. And you know, when things shut down for a period of time there, First Street Market also took a step back, and then they were like reassessing. And then, you know, when it was put back on the table for me, I said, okay, like I'm really interested, but it's no longer nights and weekends. It's Lamano. It's like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. And it just opportunity. Hey, like just
it's a good opportunity.
Yeah. Super cool. So now you're just gonna let things go for a while. You're gonna focus on your 3 things or whatever the number is, and kind of let it all settle. And
I mean, I like to think of it as 2 things. You know, it seems like 3, but it's, you know, my role has settled quite a lot. Just in general, I'm removed myself from the person that has to do everything in the business to the person who's just doing specific things. And focusing, I think that's been the biggest change, is focusing on the business itself and the growth of the business rather than being like the, you know,
person on the tools, like working, like
exactly. I'm not, you know, nights and weekends. I was serving a lot, you know, I was doing those things. You know, Lamano is like, I've had to wear every hat at some point, but at no point has that been my job. Right. And, you know, with Monitor, I mean, you know, we're so lucky to have like strong, talented staff there. And, you know, it's a team that like I'm really encouraged about. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of growth that can happen there without, you know, me being the one doing client work all of the time.
It's a good spot to be. It's taken years to get there, but it's a great spot to be.
Yes. A lot of that is just figuring out what you're good at, right? Or more specifically, like what you're not good at, and learning what you're not good at, learning what you know nothing about, and then surrounding yourself with the right people who do that really well.
It's the only way. This has been really cool, man. I got to put a bow on this one. There's only one question I ask the guest. It's, when I say Calgary, where does your head go?
Immediately the kind of like mental image in my mind, the visual that pops up is of 17th Avenue. I've spent so much time, you know, on 17th Avenue, living around. I've always been within a couple of blocks. You know, so the first picture in my head is like of the street, and then mentally, emotionally, a little bit more. You know, I've just had so many experiences that have been, you know, frustrating or like, you know, combative on the street, and just, you know, wanting things to get better. But more importantly, in those experiences, I've met a ton of people, and you know, I've worked in these places that all have built a community around them, and there's a lot of businesses that aren't there anymore. You know, like I think about my time at the gallery, but you know, think about Giant 45 and Group 7 and Rumors and Stussy and Goodfoot and Divine and, you know, 100% legit, you know what I mean? But like all of these places have, you know, built communities around them. And those people, those places, they're still doing stuff. You know, they've moved on to other things, but they're still contributing to the city, and I feel lucky to be a part of that, and you know, to be kind of have made my mark, you know? And I think that's kind of the unique opportunity that Calgary presents, is the ability to make your mark on the city. And I don't think it's like that in every city. You know, I think there are cities that affect you more than you affect it. And Calgary's a place where you can, you know, do something that people recognize. And,
yeah, I agree, man.
Yeah.
It's an interesting perspective, because I think, you know, I don't know any different just being born and raised here, but it feels that way, right? We have the opportunity to do something that will affect something, like people or.
Yeah. And, you know, even if what you do is temporary and it disappears, you know, there are, you know, people who still feel connected to it. You know, if I say a business that's not there anymore and you used to go there, you're like, you have that connection to it.
Yep.
And that just, it builds and builds. And, you know, I think that's, you know, that's the thing about Calgary.
Yep. Super cool, man. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
Yeah. Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, it's been super cool to kind of like hear your backstory and really understand what you've done and what you're up to right now. So thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Can't wait to see Ryan's.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, man. We'll talk soon.
Okay.